Well, Krish, the short answer to that would be not very effective because, in effect, the Russians have bought up old rusted tankers that sail the seas undetected outside of sanctions. That's become known as Russia's shadow fleet, taking Russian oil to countries like Turkey, India and China, which have massively ramped up buying Russian crude, which Modi and Xi get at a fat discount. Now, one way, Krish, that oil is slipping through the net is through ship-to-ship transfers. This is when two ships sidle up to each other, for example, in the Peloponnese, and Russian barrels get transferred from a legitimate vessel to a dark ship. And sometimes after that, the dark ships simply turn off their transponders, essentially disappearing. Now, analysts think these ships could number more than 1,000, and that essentially means you're talking about more than 20% of global oil trade.
So that's a crucial lifeline.
It's an existential issue. Russian oil is an existential issue. It's allowed Russia to generate this year, the estimate is $168 billion of revenue. That's allowed Putin to hike the defence budget by 68% and help resuscitate economic growth. Don't forget, at the beginning of the war, IMF thought the Russian economy would shrink. This year, it thinks it's going to grow by 2.6%. That's better than we're doing here and outshines even US growth.
So what are Western nations doing about it?
Well, we are trying now to ramp up sanctions and enforcement, for example, getting the Danes to start boarding the boats. But before the Hamas attacks, Krish, the US seemed to be essentially turning a blind eye to sanctions breaches. Don't forget that when the sanctions were written, inflation was tearing through the global economy. There was lots of panic about shortage of energy and oil. So many in the analyst community think that these sanctions have been written in a way to allow Russian oil to be impeded.
Because they need it.
Because they need it, but not stopped entirely. So, you know, there's lots of political backlash against these loopholes now, but the last thing that Rishi Sunak or Joe Biden want in an election year is for inflation to start climbing again.
Thanks, Helia. Well, I've been speaking to the former Russian Prime Minister, Mikhail Kasyanov, and I began by asking for his assessment of how the Russian authorities have acted since the news of Navalny's death was announced.
I see that authorities just very nervous in terms of what to do with the body of Alexei Navalny. And in fact, they are afraid of a funeral ceremony, which could be, of course, will be definitely a massive protest demonstration. That's why just they will, I suspect they will keep the body for a long period of time, months at least.
Hundreds of people have been arrested already. Would people dare to come out in support of him?
I think yes, some people will go. Of course, will not be hundreds of thousands, but thousands of people will be on the ceremony, but not on the protest meetings as it was before. People are afraid, definitely they're scared to go outside and to protest. Even individual picket, as they call it in the law, they don't allow even this. That is very, very dangerous. The whole environment squeezed dramatically. And that's why I think that that is the very difficult time for opposition.
Right. So, I mean, where does that leave the political opposition, including people like you who have left Russia? You're now named as a foreign agent by the Kremlin. Is the truth that the opposition is really just keeping a fire burning? There is no real hope of stopping Putin, is there?
First, of course, we need a trigger for collapse of the regime. Putin's defeat in Ukraine, it could be the trigger for changes in Russia.
Do you think there are economic sanctions that could be put in place that would have more bite?
Next step will be price of oil. Price of oil in the international market. If price of oil will be high again, as has happened in 22, Putin would finance just the whole all this production and even more, invest in the further extension of production. That's why just price control of oil price, that's the most important thing, because just you cannot stop purchasing oil because there is no replacement for Russian oil. But you can reduce just the revenue which goes to Putin.
Mikhail Kasyanov, thank you very much.
Thank you.